through sports.
Good evening and welcome to the news with me, Deepika. Let's cut across live to the press conference by Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh.
The sky is not only the limit. Now, the two countries coming together will go beyond skies to explore the unknown horizons of the universe. Technically speaking, as far as the Artemis Accord is concerned, many of you would have already been able to learn that it was there, it was in place for quite some time. India had not become a part of it, whereas already there were 25 countries signatories to it. It's not a legal document as such, but it's sort of a coming together in a framework or in a common platform to share primarily three aspects: the best practices, the guidelines, and the principles related to space. And the principles related to space activities, space projects primarily indicate use of space missions for peaceful purposes, also sharing each other's concerns and practices as far as debris management is concerned, because there's a new emerging area of space debris. Also taking care of the astronauts in distress and sharing each other's inputs. So that paves the way for a more institutionalized and a deeper collaboration between India and US. I think the other remarkable feature of it, I was thinking when this news was happening, this, as I said, this is a celebration of Indo-US relationship in this case, is that we started off our space journey much later compared to US. In fact, when we started, the USA was already on the verge of landing a human being on the surface of moon. And indeed in 1969 they did land the first human being called Neil Armstrong, where we were still in a very primitive stage, and that was one of the infancy years of India's space journey, where young scientists like Vikram Sarabhai were so deficient or were suffering for such a shortcoming of resources that they were carrying launchers on the carriers of bicycles, a famous photograph which sometimes you see in the archive. So from there it's been a quantum jump, and the quantum jump is evident, I think, most remarkably from the fact that today India is an equal partner in our space activities. At a time when USA was looked up as one of the pioneers in space, and NASA the most premier agency in space across the world, it was anybody's dream to either be a part of NASA activity or at least have a visit there and learn what is happening. Today we are in a position to provide our inputs to NASA, our pictures from Chandrayaan for further follow-up by NASA. And America also realizes the utility of we partnering them in the joint space missions. So that's, I think, a huge not only a reflection of India's space journey having taken off in a big way in the last 9 years under Prime Minister Modi, but also has given a tremendous amount of esteem and self-esteem to every Indian to be in a position where we can actually provide some cues for the US. And as I said, the first human being to land on the surface of moon was Neil Armstrong, an American, where we were still, catching up. It's also quite possible that the first mission or the next mission to the space station could have an Indian along with an American. It's not yet finalized, but now the decks are cleared for those kind of ventures as well. And the International Space Station is the other aspect of it. One is the Accord, of course. The two supplement each other. The International Space Station is about, I believe, about 300 kilometers or so from Earth, a little slightly more. In terms of miles, it's about 250 miles, because usually Americans measure in the terms of miles. So from there they hope to, further explore moon and be closer to their exploration of moon activities. And there India and America could be jointly carrying forward the next missions. And at the end of the day, what has been envisaged by the American space experts, space scientists, is returning to the moon or landing humans on the moon. And they have also laid down a target for themselves of the year 2025, which of course we'll have to watch and see. But they have a very, what I'm trying to say is a very ambitious program they have about carrying humans to the moon, and also carrying the next mission with a non-white traveler. So, or maybe, I'm sure you must have been briefed about it, the defense part and other people. But if you just want me to sum up, of course, that's again a very delightful means that we will now have American ships getting service repairs and repair works done in the Indian shipyards. So we learned shipping from them when in the earlier times, and even the British Empire. Then we will also have the Predator drones is another big breakthrough, because they are useful particularly for surveillance purposes, for intelligence purposes, and for a territory, for a region afflicted by foreign sponsor terrorism. There is a particular value of that. We will, of course, you must have read that has been, quite frequently reported since morning, the fighter jets, GE collaborating with HAL of India, and in the Department of Science and Technology, we have recently launched the quantum technology. You must be recalling just about 2 months back, which placed India into an elite club of about just 5-6 countries. And there also the agreements being signed today, partly today and partly yesterday, because the day is yet to take off there in US, include collaboration in advanced computing, including the US Quantum Development Consortium getting involved with Indian counterparts in the Indian quantum mission. And just as I was mentioning about India having taken off late and then being equal today in space, the underlying, the fact here is that quantum technology, to my mind, signifies India's pace at an equivalent level to any other country of the world. Because till a decade or so back, we would adopt a technology after it was already applied outside. In other countries, in some of the Western countries, it was adopted, applied, tried, became popular, and then we thought of adopting it. And at the time when Honorable Prime Minister is on a successful visit to US, I think the best example is that of the television. In the US had television in 1950s, and the famous 1960 election was determined by a television debate between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. The television debate tilted the tables. So powerful was the influence of television in USA in 1950s, but we could adopt it only by 1970. That too in pieces and bits, half an hour, chitra movie a week, like that. But today, with quantum technology, we are at the same level as the other 6-7 countries. They are also, by and large, at the R&D stage, so are we. They are yet to go into full-fledged application. So by that time they go, we also go. So that is also, I think, another healthy feature now, which has been signified very abundantly from this visit. Technologically, we were never keeping equal pace. Of course, the semiconductors has already been reported. Micron investing 800 billion, and critical health-wise, the US National Cancer Institute collaborating with India, because our healthcare capacities are now being recognized as equal to the best anywhere, and with the advantage of being cost effective. So we are in fact attracting many of the patients from Southeast Asia now. So we are now become a country which has discovered the virtues of health economy and also space economy. As I was saying, we are picking up cues from US. Today we have earned as much as about $174 million from the launching of American satellites, as was the calculation I think till about March 2023. And even though this launching was happening in the earlier years also, but almost 90% of this earning has happened in the last 9 years, almost more than $150 million. So I think it's given a huge, because today we live in an evidence-based era, and the measure of friendship and the measure of equal relationship between the countries also has to follow certain parameters. And in an age of technology, I think these are the best parameters which indicate that we have actually. And interestingly, just day before yesterday, my goal, one of the space experts and commentators like our homegrown Palu here, made a very beautiful comment. He said, India is a sleeping giant, which is a huge compliment. So and in fact, I think the sleeping giant has woken up the moment Prime Minister Modi landed on the American soil.
So do we have any timelines for the putting Indian astronaut on the International Space Station? And will it happen before our own Gaganyaan takes off?
They have a mission in plan in 2024. Now whether that would also carry an Indian is still being worked out.
This is the Artemis 2.
Yes.
That one, right?
That will be worked out because now we are equal partners. Now they will work out the nitty-gritties of it.
No, Artemis.
No, not Artemis. Not Artemis. The International Space Station, which is called, that rocket is called Space Launching System, SLS.
SLS तो अलग है.
SLS.
Artemis का है वो.
SLS उसका है, लेकिन है वो भी. It was an experiment done in last year.
नहीं, बट ये तो सर हर महीने एक लॉन्च करते हैं ISS के लिए, हर महीने होता है. तो मार्च अप्रैल में हो जाना चाहिए.
हाँ, वही कह रहा हूँ, they'll work it out. I mean,
सर बताओ मार्च अप्रैल में करोगे कि नहीं, ये बताओ. सर आप मोटी बात बताओ.
ऐसा नहीं है. This is the scientists have to sit together and do that. And parallelly यार हमारा गगनयान तो parallel चल रहा है ना. That's not actually doesn't have an essential bearing.
Will there be a timeline for training of Indian astronauts in the US?
Isliye Gaganyaan astronauts were trained in Russia.
Yeah, no, for this.
Yes, of course. They would work out that, because if they have to travel in the International Space Station, they would have to get themselves acclimatized to the similar kind of conditions and requirements.
So there would be an Indian in space before Gaganyaan.
I'm not sure that, because that is being worked out. Gaganyaan, of course, we'll have now the first non-human soon, followed by the next one, and by 24 maybe the actual one. So the timelines are by and large laid down. And similarly Chandrayaan. Now Chandrayaan also is an indication, has to an extent the American collaboration in it. And the Chandrayaan, the next Chandrayaan is expected scheduled to be in July. That is next month.
Two questions. So one, what does India hope to gain by sending an Indian astronaut in the ISS? Second, you say India is an equal partner with the Artemis through the Artemis Accords. Will there be any financial or technical commitments from India, or in terms of human resources? Or what will India bring on to?
No, taking the second part first, the contribution respectively from the two sides. To what extent technical, to what extent in terms of the human resource, and to what extent in terms of, I think that will be worked out, because depending on the mission. Financially, there is not much of an implication as far as Artemis is concerned. And what was the first part you said?
what would be potential
gain, yeah, that's something which has been debated for many years. Some say there is no gain at all looking into this space. But now that, as Prime Minister keeps reiterating about Amrit Kal and next 20 years, 25 years being very crucial when India would be a frontline nation. So I think if you have to play a global role and you have to be a global player or a global leader, we will have to prepare ourselves to live up to the global parameters, the global concerns, the global challenges, the global benchmarks. And that's why ever since Prime Minister Modi took over, he has never shied away from talking about concerns like climate, etc. Earlier on, India hardly ever, Indian leadership dwelt into this, and we were also not expected. So we have now plunged ourselves into the global circles. So I think being there, it is a part of our.
So, but
Dr. Singh, would you say that now we are equally partners sitting on the table, and the era of technology denial and sanctions is rightfully and fully over? Would you agree to that?
I'm not sure fully over, but yes, there is no technology denial as far as. And I think the heartening feature is that in addition, at the same time, we are also now technologically capable. So we are not lacking behind. On the one hand, we are almost at the equal level. On the other hand, we do not wait for technology to happen and then adopt it. We saw this happening even in the case of computers and of course television, as I said. I mean, many Indians would rather wonder how a presidential debate would be affected or a presidential election would be affected by a debate which happened on television, because nobody knew what was television, what was debate and what was all about. So we've seen those times happening.
So are you suggesting that India should have a television?
No, I'm not talking. And there is no political interest. I'm talking only of television, I'm not talking about election.
Sir, I wanted to understand.
What I'm trying to say is that, the newspaper across the world were galore, because Kennedy was a phenomenon that time. So they said that a TV debate has tilted the entire thing, because Nixon was a veteran. So, but we didn't have a concept of it because we were not introduced into that world. We came in about more than a decade later. Now it's no longer so.
So we've had a long time that, ISRO and the fact that, there should be an Indian astronaut aboard ISIS has been a subject of debate for many, many years before. And that time our general calculation has been that it is too expensive for too little gain. What has changed now?
No, I think that will work out. I understand the cost effectiveness of it or the outcomes. But that I think is too early to talk now, because we just got engaged, entered into a lock. So
ISRO and NASA, have they had any discussions on this?
Yes. In fact, to collaborate to what you are saying, though the accord is happening now, but the collaboration to a lesser or greater extent was happening from time to time. Even Chandrayaan had, to an extent, the American inputs in American collaboration, and in return India got the pictures of the water being present on the surface of Moon. So both of us were supplementing each other, NASA and even in terms of human resource, most of the NASA is now being run by the Indian boys and girls. And our Trivandrum Institute, Space Institute, we have a batch of about 150. The section is through this IIT JEE, which is also something lesser known. I wish that it's widely publicized or widely made aware of. The placement is 100%, about 50-60% of them go to NASA. The application form is the same as IIT JEE. So wherever I go, I keep telling them, because many people are not aware of it, so they don't know how to gain entry, gain admission into that.
So there's a G414 engine that will happen. Any offset clause on that? Anything that you're aware of?
No, I don't think that's it.
So with the next batch of astronauts trained for Gaganyaan mission, would you be partnering with US rather than Russia?
Interesting.
They're like Pallav asking about election. It's not that. We have a relationship in place with Russia and also in place with US. So, but this the astronaut is going to be Indian. Gaganyaan astronaut is going to be Indian.
No,
Yeah.
But Currently
Will
trained
the Gaganyaan
in,
astronauts who are trained for Gaganyaan, will they fly over ISS or
No,
that will be a separate set of
it's not being given a thought because that will depend on the suitability of the individuals. So that I think all these, when the mission is actually being planned, all these things will be thought about and worked out, because it's just that in principle we've decided, because for a long while, as the observers of the India space program would bear out, this has been under consideration, whether it go ahead or not. Ultimately it has happened.
They've been wanting it for a long time.
Yes.
Kahin na kahin phasa lo. They've been doing that for a long time.
Absolutely. So we in certain quarters had certain resolutions which are not to be discussed. Of course, you are aware of it, the diplomatic level, but now there is unanimity about it.
So the joint statement also mentions about the nuclear cooperation and site offered to Westinghouse at Kovada in Andhra Pradesh. So do we see that going forward, because the nuclear foreign collaborations have been on the back burner?
No, not really. Many of our atomic plants are the first one including.
I'm talking about Jitendra and
No, they have been there for other reasons. Not that we were averse to collaboration. The earliest plant, Tarapur, came out with the collaboration only, with the joint. There have been issues of a different nature. Of course, somewhere of course there were local issues, people not being cooperative. Sometimes there were of course among the two collaborators. Sometimes these are legacy issues, like for example, Soviet Union turned into Russia. So all those agreements that have been signed together, had to be redone, and the terms and conditions again to be, of course, we being India as it is, we would have liked them to be in the same government, but on the other side, the entire mechanism had changed. So these are happened for circumstantial reasons, not that we are averse to this. It's never been like that.
Sir, so can you tell us in explicit terms that Gaganyaan will continue as it is, even if we have one astronaut going on an American rocket to the International Space Station as an American co-passenger or passenger? Gaganyaan will get
No,
the
see,
full support?
the first point is that Gaganyaan is a separate mission altogether, so we don't have to mix the two. Second is that your question is based on the assumption that the astronaut who's to go to space has to be essentially from those who's been trained for Gaganyaan. So that may not be so. It may or may not be so. So the choice is wide open. It will depend more on the suitability.
So and these accords, I mean, one aspect of these accords was private companies exploiting the natural resources on the moon. I mean, that I understand was again one of the issues as to why ISRO was, has been debating this of whether should we sign up for this or not. So now, does this mean that whenever any natural exploitation of the moon's natural resources is done, India and the US will be kind of partners?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the understanding is on the same lines among all these countries, that we would avoid the harmful interference from any side. So that's an understanding. If you are not part of the accord, then it may be difficult to check each other. But those who are party to it, we are establishing a common vision based on common principles, common guidelines, and common practices which you can learn from each other. So broadly, it's guidelines, principles, and practices. So what you are referring to is essentially related to the guidelines. So these guidelines would be followed. If there is an interference even from the private sector in one of the countries, it will be expected that they take a due cognizance of it.
Sir, we have some regulations ready for print. Electronic ones would like to have some points.
चलो ठीक है
The media can join us for the refreshment.
So Pallav can also.
Pallav sir can also join.
रात हो गए तो चले जाएंगे.
He begins the whole program.
I have one more question. China and Russia, they have their own grouping towards, and they are not really part of the accord. Given our long relationship with Russia, do you see this as having geopolitical implications?
No, I will not get into that because I am not in the habit of talking out of turn. That's the MEA's concern. But all this decision has been taken with the due considerations from the MEA as well. So all those aspects which you are hinting at have been done away with those who are concerned with it, which of course is not strictly my domain, but that's been, and so it's rather a whole of government decision now.
But are we not a sovereign country? We can deal with both in a way.
You are a sovereign individual, so you can say anything.
Sir, if I have the permission, sir. No, sir. I just wanted to inform you. Actually, tomorrow also Minister is having a function, so you all are invited. He will be launching the Gemcovac booster vaccine.
Actually, मैं उसी दिन का सोच रहा हूँ.
That will be at 12 o'clock minimum. We'll share the details.
We are coming out with the first booster.
And that will be CSIR